Once smuggled animals are rescued, law enforcement officers call her. As coordinator of the Wildlife Confiscations Network, Mandy Fisher helps match trafficked animals, from alligators to jaguars to baby monkeys, with sanctuaries and care facilities. 6 toucans in a cage. These 6 keel-billed toucans were discovered bound and sedated in June by U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials. The Wildlife Confiscations Network helped find experts at qualified facilities to care for the birds. Elba Binab Carlo/U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. James M. Gaines. October 9, 2025. Get our newsletter. When a smuggler stuffed a monkey in a duffel bag and threw it out their car window at the Texas-Mexico border, law enforcement called Mandy Fisher. When a baby jaguar turned up in a dog crate, law enforcement called Fisher. And when a man attempted to stuff 60 lizards and snakes under his clothes near San Isidro in San Diego, they called Fisher once again. In each case, they had the same question: now that we've saved these animals, what do we do with them? Fisher is the coordinator for a pilot program known as the Wildlife Confiscations Network. If law enforcement officers find themselves handling wild animals rescued from smugglers, she connects them to vetted zoos and animal care facilities. In the past, officers largely had to figure out how to care for confiscated exotic creatures on their own, occasionally keeping the animals in their offices or coming up with more ad hoc solutions, says Sarah Walker, Senior Advisor on Wildlife Trafficking at the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, AZA. In one case, a law enforcement officer found a bunch of baby alligators late on a Friday night and couldn't get anyone else to take them. The reptiles ended up briefly residing in the officer's bathtub at home. Law enforcement staff would often care for the rescued animals on their own time, buy them food or medicine out of their own budgets, and sift through their own networks of contacts to find an animal rescue group, zoo or other institution that they could persuade to step in. It wasn't always ideal, says Walker, but they did it because the alternative, if nobody could take care of the animal, was euthanasia. And nobody wants to see a perfectly healthy animal euthanized, she says. Starting in 2023, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, FWS, and the AZA reached an agreement to set up a single, knowledgeable point of contact whom law enforcement in Southern California could turn to when faced with whatever monkey, jaguar, or bundle of lizards the job threw at them. And Fisher, who works out of the AZA's headquarters in Silver Spring, Maryland, would be that go-to person. Even with a jurisdiction limited to Southern California, Fisher's job was always going to be busy. In 2022 alone, FWS agents or partners reportedly investigated more than 10,000 cases of wildlife trafficking across the country, an average of nearly 30 per day. And that may only be a fraction of the real size of the trade. We know we're not close to getting everything, says Jennifer Seven, a conservation biologist and wildlife trafficking expert at the University of Richmond who is not affiliated with the Wildlife Confiscations Network. The U.S. is a pretty big hub for a lot of things moving in, out or around the world. Globally, wildlife trafficking is estimated to be a $20 billion per year industry, one that has resisted decades of mitigation efforts by international governments and that Interpol warns has become a major activity for organized crime groups. Fisher conducts a voluntary training session with a spectacled langur around 2011, in her previous work as a zookeeper at the Philadelphia Zoo. Mandy Fisher. Quick fact: the world's most trafficked mammal. The pangolin is often considered the most trafficked mammal in the world, prized for its protective scales and meat. In June, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service proposed listing 7 pangolin species under the Endangered Species Act. Fisher estimates that, on her end, her phone will ring with law enforcement looking for help with a live animal about once or twice a week. Then, she gets cracking, reaching out to her network of contacts to figure out what kind of care the animal may need, who might be able to take it and how to get it to its new home. Along the way, she's communicating back to law enforcement officers, who have the final say on placement. Each case is unique. Some are straightforward, some aren't. And, like a first responder, she needs to be ready for a call at any moment. In August 2023, for instance, just after Fisher had completed the process of vetting her initial list of zoos and institutions that could take in animals, she took a trip with her family to Ecuador. Spider monkey babies in a duffel bag. Multiple baby spider monkeys were seized by federal agents who discovered them at the Mexican-American border. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We were on the Galapagos Islands, and it was the middle of the night, and I get a phone call from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, says Fisher. They had seized a duffel bag filled with spider monkey babies. Finding a home for any animal can be a challenge, but baby monkeys were going to be especially difficult. Because monkeys share so many potential diseases with humans, like tuberculosis and herpes, non-human primates that come into the U.S. normally need to go through a 31-day quarantine. But these were babies, which meant they needed around-the-clock care, and they needed it immediately. To top it all off, there wasn't just one, but multiple of them. Fisher, contact list at the ready, quickly found the babies a temporary placement at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, which had staff and facilities to do both the quarantine and the baby care. They were immediately able to jump into action, call that agent back and start communicating, says Fisher. The park staff even made the 6-hour round-trip drive to pick up and triage the babies. They were rock stars. At the same time, Fisher rallied the AZA's resident spider monkey expert and species coordinator, and they began the search for a permanent home, eventually finding one at the Brookfield Zoo in Illinois, where the animals live now. Mandy Fisher offers a reward to a sea lion that is raising one flipper. Fisher conducts a voluntary training session with a California sea lion around 2002, during her time at the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium. Mandy Fisher. With 20 years of experience as a zookeeper under her belt, Fisher has worked with confiscated animals before. One day in 2019, for instance, while she was a curator at the Brandywine Zoo in Delaware, Fisher answered a ringing telephone and found a panicky police officer on the other end, looking at a 3-foot American alligator in a suspected drug trafficker's kitchen. Fisher says she'll never forget the relief in the officer's voice when she said the zoo could send someone to pick it up. The alligator ended up as one of the zoo's ambassador animals, going on trips to teach schoolchildren.